So without further ado, let's welcome Shadi on stage. Shadi, the stage is yours. Welcome.
Hello, thank you so much, Wang, and very excited to be part of this discussion today and chatting with the team. Awesome. Thank you so much. Shall I get started? I assume yes. Okay, so before we, I'm very excited about the Q&A and, answer any questions that the audience has. But before we go there, I have a few slides, just do a little bit of introduction, share a little bit of the learnings or insight that we've had, and I'm very excited about the questions that people will be asking today. So a little bit about me. I am basically, I grew up in Tehran, Iran. I got my bachelor from Sharif University, and then I went to Canada to get my PhD in computer engineering from UBC. I have worked in a number of companies. Actually, two of the startups that I worked didn't make it, and two of the startups that I worked were successful one. One of them was Palo Alto Networks. I worked there for 11 years before I joined Amplitude. I've been at Amplitude for the past 4 years. I have, as you see in the picture, I have two daughters that are now college students. One is a freshman at UBC, and one is a sophomore at Berkeley. They're both studying computer science and hopefully following my path. So, you mentioned a little bit about Amplitude. I'm very excited to be chatting with a number of you that are Amplitude users and customers. We are a digital analytics provider. Our goal is basically help companies basically unlock the power of their products and help companies build better products. I joke with my friend and I say, if you think about the purpose of the work that we are doing, I cannot go and cure cancer, but if I do my job well, and if it helps other fellow product and engineers be able to work better and smarter, I feel satisfied. As Wang mentioned, that we have 30,000 customers, which is about 20, a little bit less than 2,200 paying customers like Atlassian, DoorDash, PayPal, Under Armour, and so on. And we offer, three offerings: the Amplitude Analytics, which is the industry number one product analytics; the Experiment, which is our experimentation platform; and Amplitude CDP, the insight-driven customer data platform. We have about 700 employees in a number of offices and about 200 people in product development. So that's just a little background about Amplitude. So today we're going to be talking about building outcome-focused teams. And what does that mean? Before we get into that QA, let's talk a little bit about what's going on today. In today's economy, everybody is now thinking about saving and efficiency, and every organization, have been lean, and they need to basically operate even leaner and be tighter, which means that, the teams cannot only focus on output. And actually, that was true even when the economy was going great. We cannot just focus on outcome. We have to basically have an outcome-centric view and see how our engineering teams are supporting the business. One of quote that I always use is that engineering role is to help the company win or increase our capacity to win. And I think it's very important. It's not just about shipping things, it's about how the thing that I'm shipping is actually helping us win. That's the thing that I want to make sure that we all think about and we take it with us. So what does it mean? Does it mean that we don't need to have output? No, of course not. I think it's very important that first, we have to actually build, you have to get the output. And actually, one of our principles that we have in Amplitude in engineering is shipping fast. And what does shipping fast means? Shipping fast doesn't mean that you just, do a fast coding. Shipping fast means that you make decision fast, because if you get to analysis paralysis and takes you forever to make a decision, you are not going to be able to ship fast. So it's important that, for example, we say we time box every decision, within 3 days, you have to make a decision. If not, you have to escalate it to make sure that the teams are moving fast and you're making decision fast. And then, you ship fast. Why? Because you want to put what you're building in front of customer to get input, to get the feedback from them. And some of the feedbacks are qualitative feedbacks. You talk with the customer, they tell you what they like and what they not like. But some of the feedbacks are quantitative. You measure how people are using. Is it really improving the product experience? How long is it taking people to basically reach an outcome that is important for your product? So it's very important to be measuring that and looking at that and saying, okay, if this thing that I put it out there, did it actually move the metrics? One thing that is, it's very important. We talk about being metrics driven, measuring the outcome, thinking about the business, and a lot of you and us probably thinking about quarterly. Every quarter you define goals, you look at the metrics, and you measure that. One of the failure stories, or one of the learnings from us, that we realize that sometimes that can cause a team to be very short-term focused, and some of the longer-term projects are not getting prioritized. So, for example, every team has their own metrics that they want to optimize and their own North Star that they're focused, and then they something that is going to span across a few quarters and they might not be thinking about. So it's very important to make sure that even if you're thinking about the outcome and you're thinking about some of the outputs, you're thinking about longer term project as well. Also, an example that we had was that we had a team that was focusing on collaboration and how people can exchange Amplitude insight in different tools like Slack and so on, and gain the value. And some of these features were not getting to our EMEA data center. So there was a question that they're not in parity, and this was happening mainly because the goals that they were looking was the number of customers that are gonna get into this collaborative state. And because our EU data center did not have maybe as many customers, the teams were not really motivated to go and focus on that. So I think I'm telling the story is that we need to have the defining the outcome, make sure we go from the output to the outcome, but also we need to make sure that we are prioritizing long-term initiative, and also important initiatives that might not necessarily move a short-term metric, but it's important for the company. And so, we talked about the output matters, but as you know, and as it's very important that we really think about the outcome. Again, the natural tendency of all of us engineers is to ship things, and think about, okay, I delivered this feature, I have achieved that, and okay, my job is done. But I think it's very important that we both during the planning and as we are deciding what we need to build, we think about how is it going to move the needle for the business. And both after we have shipped something, we measure saying whether it actually moved the needle that we were interested in. And if it didn't, we basically go back to the drawing board and figure out what are the things that we can do to improve that? I wanted to improve this metric, but it didn't. What is the learning here? What is the hypothesis that we evaluated? And I think you can only do that if you're really measuring all the interaction that the user have and looking at those results and basically analyzing, whether it moved the needle for you. And actually, as I mentioned, during the planning and you're thinking about what am I building and what metrics I am trying to improve, I think it's important to also think about is this thing that I'm doing, is it a retention play? Is it activation play? Is it helping customer to retain? Is it helping customer to get activated? Is it helping get us new customer? So you have that model, and then you make sure that you're measuring that and then see whether that actually moved the needle. But one thing, again, I want to call out that is very, very important to be outcome focused. And one of the learning that we had is that it's very important to set the right, right goal and right metrics. So even if you say it's, for example, we have an example of a new product line that we were launching, or, a few years ago, Amplitude Recommend. and we were setting an outcome, which was the goal was that we want to get to this revenue from this product, which in the first phase it looks good. You have an outcome, you're shipping the product, you're going to go measure whether it's actually moved the needle on that. But one of the learning that we had is that for that product at the earliest stage, if you set your goal to be revenue focused, then your team might be incentivized to go after a few big companies that are basically, give you a big revenue rather than a lot of customers. And the team is becoming a little bit like a consulting to basically get these $1 million deals rather than going and building a solution that solves a lot of customers. So we learned that lesson, that maybe for that product at that stage, or early stage, the goal, the outcome, the metric that we should be setting is the number of customers rather than the revenue of that customer. So that is very important that that. I think it all goes back that as you're setting this outcome every stage, you think about what am I optimizing for, and make sure that you're setting the right outcome so that incentivize the team to optimize the right thing. And when you're optimizing and you're setting goals, one of the other thing that is important that we have been doing at Amplitude is that we make sure that we're thinking about the entire team. We always call it product development. Product development includes engineering, product, and design. And you need to basically make sure that these different people and different teams have the same goal, or they're aligned and they're marching together. So organization of the team becomes very important. We always say at Amplitude, we believe in a triad. We believe engineering, product, and design need to work together to basically make sure that we are delivering the right features and moving the right metrics and the right needle. And I think, of course, people have bring different experiences. So a PM might be thinking more about what and the why, and engineers and design might be thinking more about the how. But I think it's important that even if they bring that perspective, they're all responsible for the same outcome. So it's not that the engineers just think about shipping and the PM only thinks about whether it moves the business needle or not. All of them thinking about that. And I think it's very important that engineers don't think that they're order takers and the product is coming with a requirement and just take that and go build that. No, engineers have to be opinionated, have to be in the discussion to decide what is the right thing to be building. And I think one of the value of having engineers is that they can actually bring up opportunity of things that we can do that product might think is possible because they don't know necessarily what's possible in there, or they basically, if products are going and dreaming is something that is not possible, engineering can bring that perspective. So I think it's very important that the engineering, product, and design are really working together as they're thinking what we are building. For example, an example that we had at Amplitude, we were thinking about, how do we, help make our product easier to use and, get people started easier. There's some work that is happening to creating templates and creating, out of the box report and so on and so forth to help people get started faster. But also as the engineer and product and design were working together, people say that, we can use maybe some NLP, natural language processing, when we are sending, and they call it question to query, which is what we are building. Please keep it confidential. But that can get people started at the beginning when they're starting to work, Amplitude. So engineers said, okay, come with that idea that we can go and build that. And that basically, that collaboration between engineering and design basically started this project that they're building, and hopefully that can help us be very successful. Be our customer become more successful. But so as I said again, they bring their perspective, but they're working as one team to basically to achieve that goal. So what is the takeaway from this? And I actually want to put that so that, we go to Q&A, which I'm very excited about, is that first, basically, we have to identify the right metrics. As I mentioned, if you set the wrong metrics, you are basically incentivizing people the wrong way. So make sure that, you're setting the right metrics. Make sure you are thinking about longer term, not just only quarter to quarter. Start the goal setting that is important. It's important part of that. Second, I want to make sure that, delivering output is necessary. It's important that deliver output, but it's not enough. And, want the team to be getting into the mode of, after I've delivered this feature, it's not done. I need to be seeing how is it moving the needle and really going back and measuring that. And the other thing that I want to make sure is that, it's very important to set the right organization and to support that. So making sure that if you're thinking about outcome centric view, have that for all of their team, and make sure that the teams are having the same goals and they're working together. So org design really make a difference as you're thinking about how to change the culture or make sure that the team are thinking about the outcome. So I think that's it for just a tease out on outcome driven. So I want to basically open it up to ask questions that people have, and I'm very excited to answer any question that the audience have on these topics.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Shadi. And I agree with you. The part that is the most interesting is really about the Q&A from the rest of the audience. I love your 3 key takeaways. I also have been at Plato in a situation where we were not tracking and optimizing for the right metrics, and it can have a disastrous effect on the business. So the first question is about could you explain how you align metrics and goals across different teams? Are there challenges you have faced in ensuring alignment? So I guess you have a big engineering team today. You have multiple teams. How do you ensure alignment? And remind us how many engineers you are leading today.
Yeah, so we have about 150 engineers, and as I said, the entire product development is about 200, so about 50 product and design. Yeah, I think that's a very good point. I think alignment goes at different levels. So, as I said, we have this structure that there are teams, and within each team, you have the triad. You have the product, design, and engineering that are working together. So each of these teams are setting the same goals, between the product design and engineering, and they're trying to basically measure the same outcome and move the same outcome, which is happening very, very well. The challenge comes out when you have cross team. So you have some dependency, and a team is depending on another team, and that other team is not moving fast, or that other team is prioritizing something else. And I think that is a challenge that we're dealing with every day. So I think one thing that is very, very important, that it's important that we make decision fast. As I said, we talk about shipping fast, but shipping fast, a big part of that shipping fast is deciding fast. So if a product team is depending on something out on one of these horizontal team, infrastructure team that needs to be built, and they have so many other things. So there is a question, shall the infrastructure team build A or B, and that's going to impact the product team. So if they're going to get into this discussion of for weeks discussing whether it's going to happen or not, that doesn't help you with shipping fast. So we always follow this model that, we have leaders. First of all, leaders, need to go into a room and decide whether they're aligned on the priorities of the work and the dependency that is happening. If they're aligned that, okay, this is the way the infrastructure team, for example, is going to prioritize things, and that's when my features is going to get that benefit, that's great. If they're not aligned, as I said, I mentioned it that you have to time box it. So you spend 3 days. 3 days, discuss it, and whether you reach an agreement or not. If you reach, perfect, come and tell me. If not, escalate to the next level. And both of the people need to be. Actually, there is something talk about healthy escalation and non-healthy escalation. Healthy escalation is that both people bring it up, they bring their perspective. They said, that's why I think it's important to build A versus B. And then, at the end of the day, the next level leader is going to make the call and own the decision that, okay, this is how we're going to do the prioritization. And majority of the time, the team actually reach the same conclusion, but sometimes it needs to be coming up. And again, as I said, I always believe bad decision is better than no decision. So I think that's why I think we time box it. We come back, even if we don't make the perfect decision, we make a little bit imperfect decision, but it's important to decide, and we deliver that. The other thing that I think is important as we are thinking about alignments of teams and products, different products are at different stages. So as you know, at Amplitude, as I said, we have three different product lines, and there are different elements. So some products might be at earlier in their maturity. So what they're optimizing for might be a little bit different than the other products. So for example, if your product is right at the beginning, what you're optimizing is probably very speed. I want to put things out there and see people are really getting that. If your product is more mature, there are other elements that becomes more, maybe non-functional requirements, scalability, quality becomes more important. So, and if you realize that there is this dependency, and this horizontal versus vertical teams are not aligned because they're at different stages, you might decide actually sometime that, because I'm optimizing for speed, I'm okay to not optimize for efficiency. So I actually let that team that wants to move fast to build even the infrastructure piece so that they can move fast. So I think this is very, very important to be aligned. What are you optimizing for, and make sure to see whether, I can use the current structure or I have to make another judgment call to create that. But 100% agree that alignment is very challenging, and it's very consciously you have to be always thinking about it to make sure that you can work cross team with the right alignment.
Awesome, I love it. So prioritizing for speed, a few ways to do that: time boxing, escalation rules, and identify dependencies. One of the first episode of this engineering Q&A, we had Saknik, the CTO of Okta, who was also saying, those are all the things I'm not going to make decisions on. He has a clear list with that was actually constantly updating, so that the team knew that they could not escalate on those type of decision, and they had to make a decision, and to just in order to move fast, because when you're leading 1,500 engineers, in his case, you can't be involved in any decisions. So we try to be very explicit to optimize for speed of decisions. Thank you for your advice on this. The next question is about the size of engineering team, and I guess when you are a startup like Plato, it's way easier to have the engineering team that is customer centric. You actually are in a small room, you all talk about customer problem together. You are customer centric, but how does the size of the engineering team impact its ability to be customer centric and outcome driven? So at 150, how does it change?
Yeah, they have a very, very good point. I think when you're small, everybody, there are things that happen. Everybody has a high sense of ownership. Everybody is, talking with customer. They have that. And as you get bigger, it's very easily that this can get diluted. People, maybe ownership gets diluted. Maybe people don't talk to the customer. They lose that connection. So if you want to be successful, I think it's very important, again, be intentional and figure out what is important for you as an organization, and really spend the time to basically focus on that. And nothing comes for free, so you have to spend the energy. So for example, we say we want our engineer to be customer driven. We want engineers to have connection with customer. So even if we are measuring the outcome with our quantitative metrics using Amplitude or other tools, but we also believe in qualitative. And I'm basically saying, of course, I'm saying every engineer needs to get on a call once a week, but maybe people are going once a month. But the fact that we are really saying, spending the time to have them talk to customer, get on a customer call, and get, okay, how this thing is being used. Of course, you get a lot of data, compiled data from product people, product manager who are talking to the customer. But I think it's important for engineers to be on the call and get that direct feedback. The same thing about, outcome or business outcome. When you're very, very small, you're very connected to the number of customers, you're connected to the revenue, so you really know how you're going to. As you get bigger, you might get further away. So I think that's very important, that as you're setting metrics, and if you want to be outcome, think about, okay, what is the leading indicator of that revenue that I need to be changing here? What am I doing? Because it might take a little bit longer to see that it's happening, and it might be dependent on GTM and so on and so forth. But okay, this is what I'm optimizing for. For example, I want to optimize for retention. So I want to make sure that our customers are actually using and getting to the delightful moment. So that's what the metrics that I'm following. So again, being that deliberate, thinking, okay, considering that the team is bigger, considering that there is a much longer path from what you're developing to the actual customer and the feedback, what are the things that you can do intentionally to basically create that, whether it's defining some of the leading indicator metrics or getting engineering on some of those customers. It gets harder, and it gets, you're spending more effort. But if that is very important, I think it's worth spending that effort and getting that out, that result. So again, goes back again, every stage is that what are you willing to spend your time and energy? And if it's important, you will be spending the time. Before, when you're smaller, it's very easy directly you have, and you're bigger. And another aspect that is very important, that as I talk about the outcome, when you're small, you get the feedback much faster. When you're bigger, it's very important to have a lot more quantitative data. So you basically look at across all of your customer, because you cannot necessarily get from individuals. So that's why it's important that you're measuring quantitative data to basically help you get that input.
Yeah, it's a little question was, do you mandate engineers to participate in customer calls? Do you have, and I think a broader question is, do you have structure to measure this in terms of time spent doing customer support, or time, a number of times a week or a month you spend in customer calls? Do you track those things, or do you think this should not be tracked because it should be part of the culture? How do you do to be rigorous on those things? If you
Yeah, that's a very, very good question. I think I'm going to be very honest with you. We tried a number of things, and a number of them were not successful. So there was a point of time that we were asking people to track in a spreadsheet on, what are they, what customer calls they're going to. And it became the chore. People were not going on customer calls, and people were feeling that. So I think, and later on, we basically integrated with the calendar. So we get that data directly from the calendar, and we put that data on Amplitude, and we could measure, okay, what's happening, but kind of measure that. So I think it's very important that there is an element that defining what is important for you. I think really keep talking about that's our culture, that's what makes us successful, that's our competitive advantage. And then there are something that it might becomes harder to follow, and you decide what is the right level of rigor or follow-up you want to do. So for example, at the beginning I was maybe saying that customer engineer needs to be on a customer call. Later on we said, okay, if they join listen as a team to a recorded call and they analyze that, they can get that insight too. So necessarily have to be. So be flexible, but think about what is the goal. The goal was that people have that connectivity to the customer. They know how their feature is impacting the outcome. And again, different teams are different. So for example, a team is developing a customer-centric feature, they definitely needs to be with a customer call. We have customer development partner that are part of that call, and you develop with them. But an infrastructure team might not be that. So they getting on a customer call and or listening to a customer call together that talks about scalability, give them some insight that they're thinking about, okay, how our work is impacted. So sorry, I'm not giving it one answer because it depends. You have to make sure that you set the culture, and depending on the team, find out what is the right way of measurement that can help you. But at the end of the day, if you don't keep going at it, it's gonna die down because people, that doesn't happen naturally necessarily. It's not, so it's important for you. You have to spend the effort and follow up.
So the answer is it depends. So some teams that are more supposed to be more customer centric, we are going to track it more. For example, this Google Calendar to Amplitude dashboard. But for teams like infrastructure that don't need to, maybe we should give them more leeway.
Exactly.
Got it. So, the next question is from Nick. If you have multiple products that may not be clearly differentiated from each other, do you think there should be one triad per product? For example, one engineering product design team per product. So how do you, this is more like an organization structure question.
Yeah, I think what I'm hearing, if I'm reading it correctly, so Nick thinks that they have multiple products and the products have overlap because they came through acquisition and they're not really differentiator. So one thing that is important again, at any point of time, you think about what am I trying to optimize. So, for example, if you have acquired the company, you might decide, okay, I want to optimize for integration. It's very important that this team is integrated, or I want to optimize that they go as fast as possible. And each of these is going to give you different outcomes. So, for example, if you really want to make sure that they're integrated, you basically create one triad for both of these teams that have overlap, because it's very important for them to be integrated as fast as possible. But if you're thinking about, I want these teams that I acquired, they go as fast as before, I think it's important to let them operate on their own, within their own triad. And usually companies, the way it works is that when you go to an acquisition, you set a different triad for each of them, you let them go as fast, and then they can come and get merged with the existing team, so that you're not shutting them down. Because sometimes people acquire a company and they kill them because they spend so much time, the politics and integration and all of those things, and they lose that. So that's why a lot of companies basically focus on making sure that the new teams are going to go fast as possible. And actually we had a similar example. One thing that we acquired a company iteratively that was on data planning. And at the beginning, they have their own tech stack. They were going fast. We let them go fast. And then at some point, we merged the solution that we have, our governance, with their solution. We actually, at some point, we merged them and we put them in the same triad. And because we basically had two solutions, and the problem with having two solutions was things are going to move slow, because when you want to add a feature, which one do you add to? You have two things that so we actually put a big effort of integration and migrating all customer, because we thought it's very important, and not only for customer experience, but also for impacting our velocity of development later on. Because when it's one code base, one team, then you can build on top of that. Again, it depends, depending on the stage of that, and you need to be intentional. So if you're optimizing for speed within this team, it's better to go slowly. But at some point, you don't want to have silos, so it's important to merge them and have a similar, have one triad that deal with all of these, and think about the implication of merging and integration.
Yeah. We have a similar story where it's not an acquisition, but we branched out a team that was building a new product from scratch, because we have 5 years of tech debt from the core product, and we wanted to move way faster. So we actually decided to branch out a small team, and we let the small team operate for 6 months, for 5-6 months, and then we just merged the two teams yesterday on the new tech stack. And I'm very excited to be able to have only one tech stack, one product, one platform, when we can iterate on way faster. So this is the new brand, new design and tech stack that I just showed before. So I 100% agree with you that it depends on the phase and what you want to optimize for. So I have two questions about counterintuitive. Might be counterintuitive, but can you share a time when a focus on output was the right choice for your team instead of outcome? maybe for a project where the outcome would be way longer to arrive, or just to keep the team motivated or something like this? I don't know if you have an example that you could share to the audience.
No, I kind of tried to allude to that when I was presenting. Example of that we decided that we want to have EMEA data center, EU data center, because it's important for privacy concern of European companies. And as we, again, majority of users are still in US. So as we develop the EU data center, the distribution between EU and US are not, comparable. It's majority. So when teams were thinking about developing features, and the features that that is going to move the needle, the number of users who are getting that value, or the number of users who are getting to the stage, they were really focusing, if you're thinking about the outcome, they were focusing mainly on the US center, because that's what move the needle significantly. And we were kind of neglecting some of the EU, basically integration with EU and creating the parity of the feature over there, and became a little bit of it becomes a little bit of a negative cycle, because if you don't have all the features, then you might not get customer in there, and so on and so forth. And that was the point that we said, yes, you have this outcome, but I think it's very important that we add this feature in this EU data center, even if it's not necessarily moving the needle or getting you more customers on that right away. Because if you don't break that negative cycle. You need to do that. And so it's an important initiative that we have taken, that we want to have the parity with the EU data center. So that was a decision that was not really driven by data and outcome. It was really driven by this feature needs to go in that area and needs to be happening.
Awesome. It's a great example. One very interesting question about the North Star metric. So you mentioned about one of the key takeaway was to pick the right metric. So what's the North Star metric that you're optimizing for today? And did it change? I'm sure it did. How often does it change? And what impact does it have on the business when it does? And maybe you have an example of when you had a bad metric, and now hopefully you have the right metric. So can you share a little bit about that?
No, that's a very good point. Yes, we definitely have a North Star metric. And what we had maybe last year was weekly learning users. These are users who are actually creating a content in Amplitude, and they're sharing, and 2 more people are actually reviewing that content. And we're kind of basically, they're actually weekly teaching users. They're people who are teaching analytics to the rest of the organization, right?
And teaching users, not active, teaching.
Teaching, yeah, or we call them learning, but it's for really teaching in the definition of that. So these are people who create the content, but and other people are coming and looking at those content and gaining insight. Because we really believe analytics is a team sport, right? People need to get started. So if I'm creating one analysis and then you come and look at it, or another person coming and look at it, that becomes a more knowledge share within the organization and get people more excited about analytics. So that's what we had. And I think this is an important metric right now. But last year, as we were looking and analyzing for the analytics product, we realized that the first step is saving, right? First, you need to save a content, and then you need to have people. So actually, we realized that I think it's important that not only we keep weekly learning users as one of our North Star, we actually have a weekly saving users to basically get to the saving part, because that's the first stage in that. So that's what's important, that we really go get people to save content more, and then they become more spreading that. So yes, you definitely need to be changed. And then it comes back, okay, how does this metric is gonna impact the business, right? Okay, do companies that have higher number of weekly saving organization or weekly learning, weekly saving user or weekly learning users, do they retain more? Do they, do they expand? And that's what I think is, I mentioned, as you're defining a metric and North Star, you need to be defining, is this metric is a retention metric? Is it an expansion metric? Is it an acquisition metric? Because going with that mindset, you know what you're optimizing for. And we clearly saw that, companies who have people who are spreading, the retention is much higher because people are gaining the value and then spreading that knowledge within the organization.
And that metric is only true for the EPD team or also for the customer success team or the sales team or the other team? Is it like company-wide metrics or more EPD?
It is a company-wide metrics because it's very important. And, we report our metrics. We have a company scorecard, and the metric that we report from the product development to the rest of the company is that metrics, because that's important, because customer success looks at that and look at the health of their customers. They look at that, and that helps them to kind of identify the health of the customer.
Awesome. I think we are out of time. So I just wanted to let you know that the team really enjoyed, the community really enjoyed it. So thank you very much for your tips.